Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to the first annual celebration of the Tata-Cornell Initiative. Hopefully this is the first of many, many such celebrations that we'll have. I came to Cornell in May 2013 to take over this program as the founding director. And it's been a great honor to come here, and it's been a great honor to set up this program. As many of you know, the Tata-Cornell Initiative was started with a very generous endowment that we got from Mr. Ratan Tata. And I had several opportunities over the last 18 months to meet with him, to sit down and have conversations with him about the program and about his intentions for giving the support for this program, etc. And from the very beginning, he emphasized very clearly to me that he was deeply concerned about the chronic and very stubborn levels of malnutrition in India, and the very stubborn levels of poverty in India. And despite the rapid growth that's been taking place in India, you still see the stubbornness of poverty and hunger and malnutrition. And he felt that it's time that we took some serious look at this problem and figure out what we can do about it. And he felt it was time for some outside groups to take a look at this problem, and that it was too important just to have it being addressed by the Indian professional community itself. So naturally he thought about Cornell, and he thought that Cornell has unique expertise in the area of agriculture, in the area of nutrition and policy. And this support was a way to bring Cornell to come in and address this problem. So that's what we've been trying to do over the last year and a half, try to figure out how to build up this program. So we very quickly narrowed down the issue to addressing the problem of maternal and child malnutrition. We felt that that's the center that we should be looking at. If we can get maternal nutrition right, then we get child nutrition right, and with that we see improvements over generations taking place. So that's the key, and we kept that as the focus of this program. But we also realized very quickly that in order to address maternal and child nutrition, this is not just simply an issue of providing food to the mother and food to the child. It's a multidimensional problem. It's multidimensional in the sense of agriculture, the role of agriculture productivity, income growth, etc., being one major pathway towards improved supply of food, improved supply of diversity of food, improved quality of food, etc. At the same time, just having enough supply doesn't mean that everybody in society has access to that food. So there's significant problems of poverty and inequity, and that then results in significant inequalities in terms of access to food. And so as the program looks at supply, one should also figure out how do you improve overall access to food. So in this area, we've been trying to look at the role of markets, the role of traditional markets, and improvements of traditional markets in enhancing diversity of food, enhancing overall supplies that can reach rural communities, etc. But also looking at food safety net programs that reach the poorest of the poor, and figuring out ways in which one can improve the nutrition levels of these safety net programs, fortification programs, biofortification programs, etc. Then the third dimension that excuse me, that we started to look at is the intra-household allocation of food. So again, we know that you can have enough supply of food at the household level, but that doesn't mean that every member of the household has equal access to that food. We know, especially in South Asia, that women tend to have less access to the same food and the quality and diversity of food as the men in the household. Even today, even among middle-class populations, women tend to wait till all the men have eaten before eating themselves. And that creates an inequity in itself in terms of access to food. So women and girls tend to be discriminated in access relative to men and boys. And having intra-household behavior change that changes this dynamic and improves equity in intra-household access is an important part of what we need to do. And that's something we're starting to look at. Finally, water and sanitation play a crucial role in the way that food that's consumed is converted into nutrients and results in good health for the individual. And we felt from the very beginning that this program needs to also look at clean water, access to clean water, access to sanitation, etc. And we've been very fortunate that the Agua Clara group at Cornell has been doing a lot of work in this area, and we've been able to get Agua Clara to be a solid partner with us, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that today. So as you can see, the program itself is a multidimensional program, and by definition, a multidisciplinary program. And it's not a program that one school, one department, or one professor can keep to themselves, but it's a program that needs to cut across the campus. And I'm happy to say that right now we've got 4 different departments that are quite actively involved in this program, and we're looking forward to enhancing that further over the years. And that's something that I'm really focused on doing. This program runs on the power of students. Without students, we would not have this program. And both PhD students as well as master's and undergraduate students. That's the core engine that runs this group. Today, we've got 8 PhD students who are signed up on this program. And we're building up to a total of 16 PhD students. So we're recruiting at the rate of 4 students per year. And we will keep a maximum pipeline of 16 students. But the good news is that the departments from which these students are coming have all been very generous in providing 50% support for the students. So essentially, our program supports each of these students for 2 years, and the school that the students come from supports them for 2 other years. So essentially, we can provide 4 years of support with this 50-50 sharing with the departments. That's been enormously helpful to us, and without that, there's no way we can get the breadth of this program to where it ought to be. In addition to the PhD program, we started last summer with a summer internship program, and we had 6 summer interns spend 6 weeks in India. And they spent a significant amount of this time living in rural areas in India. The summer interns were undergraduates as well as master's degree students. And you're going to hear from them. You're going to hear about the great work that they did out in the summer. You're also going to hear from our first PhD student who came back from the field, Soumya Gupta. She's going to talk about what she did in her 1 year out doing field work in India. And that's one thing we've been insisting on within the program, is that our PhD students should spend a year on the ground. This way you really get down into the details of India and the problems of hunger and poverty in India, and really figure out how to make a difference there. And that field work is a crucial part of what we think this program is all about. We also have 2 postdoctoral fellows who've joined the program, Asha Sharma and Julia Phyllis, and both of them are picking up intense areas of work. Asha is looking at climate change and agriculture. Julia is looking at much better metrics for looking at food security status at an aggregate level and then going down to lower scales. And that's something we'll be talking about as we go into future celebrations. Right now, they just started, so we're giving them time to work through that. We're also fortunate that we have 2 visiting scientists with us. Roger Liu has come from China, and Gina Srinivasan has come from India. And both the visiting scientists have come with their own money, so we're happy to host them, we're happy to have them as part of our team. Roger is working on a really interesting analysis looking at how food systems are changing in China as well as in India, and how food safety is changing, and the risks of food safety are changing, and how these 2 countries are trying to handle this problem. A really interesting area of work that needs to be done, especially for these 2 economies that are growing so rapidly. And Gina has been looking at groundwater systems, what's happening to groundwater systems in India, as well as waste treatment, and how wastewater can be recycled back into agriculture systems, etc. Again, wonderful additions to the TCI team that we have. So we'll be hearing a lot about some of the current work that's going on, and I'll let you hear it directly from the people who are doing the work. But let me give you a little bit of an idea of a few things which we're not going to present today, but some new work that we're starting up with. We have a lot of excitement right now in India around fortification of staple grains. As many of you know, the public distribution system in India is providing almost free rice and wheat to poor households that live below the poverty line across the country. Some of that works well, some of it doesn't work well, but this is an ongoing long-term program. What we are trying to do is enter this program working with the state governments and figuring out ways in which we can fortify the wheat that's milled, and the wheat grain that's milled that's available through the PDS, and fortify it at the point of the village mill, and provide iron-fortified wheat to poor rural women at a district level. So we're trying to cover a whole district in Gujarat as a pilot. And next week, we have our launch meeting taking place in India, and I'll be heading out for that. And we have a whole group of partners, including BIFE, which is a major NGO in India, and DSM, which is a big nutrient provider. And we're trying to bring these groups together and really roll out a fairly big food fortification program focused on wheat. As part of that program, we have invited, and he's accepted the offer, we've invited Venkatesh Manar, who some of you may know was the former president of Micronutrient Initiative, which is a big international group that was focused on promoting micronutrients in developing countries. So Venkatesh has kindly agreed to give us 1 month a year of his time, and he's been appointed as a senior fellow of TCI, and he will be spending a lot of his time helping us with this project that's taking off in India. A second area that I'm really excited about is bringing the soil science group in Cornell to address some of the problems of soil fertility in India. So Harold Van Ness, who's a professor in soil science, and Phil Frost, his PhD student, are looking at doing some very intensive soils work in India and bringing in this concept of a lab in the box concept, where you can have a box with all the instruments needed for doing intense soil analysis at the plot level, at the farm level, and then digitizing this information and then looking at ways in which we can build an advisory service where farmers can call into this advisory service and get farm-specific recommendations on what they need to do relative to managing soil fertility, relative to managing crop choices, agronomy choices, etc. So this is an interesting twist on the back office concept, where we're creating back offices within rural communities themselves, and with the real rapid spread of cell phone technology that's taking place today, farmers can really use that cell phone technologies to call into this office for advisory services. Something we're really excited about. Phil is heading out to India in January to start looking at this and potentially building up a PhD research from that. The last point I want to make in terms of things that we are doing that we won't be talking about today, I am talking about them, but we won't be presenting them, is we are doing joint courses in India on the broader issues of food security, food policy, etc. We did one course last year with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, which brought together 100 students, and we did a 1-week-long, fairly intense course on food policy analysis. Ravi Kanbor and I are going to do a similar course next July in Gandhigram University in Tamil Nadu. And we're also looking at doing another course at the Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai. And I find that these joint courses are a really very useful mechanism by which we can not just transfer knowledge between Cornell and India, but also have an opportunity to get a core group of faculty within Indian universities that become a bridge for us between our program and the Indian universities, and have a way in which eventually we can build long-term collaborative research opportunities with them. I'm going to stop here. I'll come back towards the end again and say a few more words. But let me take one moment to thank Catherine Bohr for coming and being part of this celebration, and Max Pfeffer. Both Catherine and Max have been so enormously helpful in getting this program going and in making sure that we had everything we needed, and were extremely supportive. And I'd like Catherine to come up and say a few words. I know she has to leave, so if you can give her a chance before she takes it.
Well, thank you very much, Prabhu, and it is truly wonderful to be here to celebrate the successful inaugural year of the Tata-Cornell Agriculture and Nutrition Initiative. And you will hear some presentations that will follow my remarks now, you will see that TCI has already accomplished a great deal in a very short period of time. Now, projects like TCI's Minimum Nutrition Data Set for Agriculture, for example, will provide a nutritional snapshot of individuals who live in rural areas in the developing world. Pilot testing for the project's Dietary Diversity Module began this summer with a team that was comprised of TCI staff, interns, and researchers from our partner institute, the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics. This work will be key to creating a rigorous data set that really can help inform future research and future policy. And it will help us gain a better understanding of the links between agriculture and nutrition, so critically important as we look to the future. I truly appreciate the opportunities that TCI has provided for our students, who have gained valuable experience this past summer designing survey methods and implementing those methods in the field. I'll talk a little bit about Alex King, spoiler alert, I guess I should say. He had an internship through a Tata Institute for the Social Sciences Initiative to research market-based solutions for iron deficiency. He was guided through his research with the help of TCI Associate Director Bhaskar Mitra. By collecting data, by conducting interviews with shop owners and R&D departments, and visiting food markets in Mumbai, Alex was able to grasp the intricate connections between market interactions, agriculture and nutrition, while also honing his research skills and actively engaging with the world, with the work that he seeks to do to help improve nutrition in that area. TCI is defined by interdisciplinary collaborations, and I just love hearing Prabhu talk about all the partnerships that are emerging throughout this past year. Its researchers are drawn from a variety of fields here at Cornell and around the world, from nutrition to soil science to sociology to economics, and together these teams of scientists tackle problems in a very holistic way. Our students, the staff, and our faculty collaborate with members of the communities in which they work and with local and global development partners such as ICRISAT, Harvest Plus, TISS, and Delhi University to strengthen collective capacity and to facilitate efficient systems-wide approaches to reduce hunger and poverty. They take a wide range of approaches to complete their work, from training and communication to policy briefings, from keynote speaking engagements and strategic planning sessions. TCI has already become an active voice in crucial conversations about the future of food systems at the nexus of nutrition and agriculture, and I have no doubt that TCI will be a key player in policy development as we look to the future. I would like to point out that TCI's accomplishments would not have been possible without the leadership of Prabhu Pengali, and certainly the generous endowment for the Ratan Tata and the Tata Education Development Trust. I am so grateful to Prabhu and to the Tata Trust for their leadership and for their support. It's been invaluable and it's tremendously appreciated. We know that India has seen much economic growth over the last several decades, but many rural and poor communities have remained relatively untouched by the first green revolution, and they do continue to experience dire poverty and malnutrition. So to turn this around, we need the types of collaborative efforts that we will be talking about in the presentations here. We have to do a lot more than just grow more food. We need governments who are leading by setting directions and by creating environments for success. We need businesses to play their role here to drive implementation through innovation, through investment, through competition. We need communities actively engaged in building local capacity. But institutions like Cornell and our peers must push forward with research, with development, with extension. And that's why initiatives like this one, like TCI, are so vital to the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell, and our land grant mission of providing knowledge with public purpose not only to the citizens of New York and the United States, but around the globe. My congratulations to you, Prabhu, and to all who have been involved on what you have already achieved. And I very much look forward to celebrating many years of future accomplishments, and I'm sure there will be many, many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I'd now like to invite Monroe Webershek, a professor in water engineering and the president of Agua Clara, or chairman of the board, something of Agua Clara.
I'd like to thank Prabhu for the invitation to talk here today and really for the invitation to go to India and take a stab at taking our technologies to India to see what we can do there.
So you need to use the mic, please. Okay.
I am not used to standing at one place when I talk. Okay. So I am I'm the director of Agua Clara, and I'm here representing both the Agua Clara program at Cornell and also my former students who founded Agua Clara LLC, a social entrepreneurial company that is now working in India. So Agua Clara at Cornell, we've been around since 2005, so we're about to enter our 10th year or finish our 10th year, and we've been working in Honduras, focused on Honduras for that decade. And at the end of this year, we will be providing 45,000 people in Honduras with safe drinking water. Over the 10 years, we've been working very hard at researching, inventing, and designing technologies, water treatment technologies that are sustainable and that work in really rugged contexts. And so it wasn't a great surprise when a few years ago, in the fall of 2012, I was invited to consider going to India with those technologies and see what opportunities there might be there. So that was at the invitation of what was then TACOAN, a Tata-Cornell Initiative. And what ended up happening is Agua Clara LLC took the initiative of going to India and begin working there. So they went to India, and let me go back to this. So this was the system that we decided to work on implementing. And the idea was to take water from a lowland hand-dug well, use that to provide water to the village, and to use a solar pump to pump that water up to a tower, and on top of that tower to have a water treatment plant. So here are the pieces. So there's a lowland well, and that's actually one of our problems sitting right there, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's the pump control room and the solar panels, and my engineering hat is on, and I'm saying, and I bet those panels aren't big enough. And there's the filtration technology. It's a filtration technology that we invented in 2010. We deployed it in Honduras in 2011, and there are now, counting today, there are 3 plants in Honduras that are using this technology. So it's a brand new technology in Honduras. We're using it at a much larger scale. So part of the challenge in going to India was scaling it down to this small size. And there's a chemical dosing system that's used for both chlorinating and adding a coagulant that's inside that blue room on top of the plant. And ideally, this is the goal, we're providing safe drinking water on tap or at taps at these households. And the idea is that this system be maintainable by an operator from the community. So that very quick sequence was just showing there's the plant operator who was, I think he's supposed to be in high school, and he was instead operating the plant, going through the sequence of turning some valves, and then it was going to continue on and be noisy, but he was backwashing a filter, cleaning the sand so that it could be then returned to service and used again. Those columns have sand in them. What else has happened? So this is the well that is being used to provide water, and they're a great idea because you can get a lot of water out of one of these wells, more water than you can get out of a smaller diameter well. So that's the advantage of this system. But the water in it is not quite drinkable. You can see that. It doesn't look quite clean. And And we thought we were good, although as engineers, I was always a little bit concerned because we didn't ever have any data saying what the turbidity was in these wells over time. But I'm used to making decisions with inadequate data, and so we proceeded. However, our filters are really designed for pretty clean water, okay? And then this is what happened. We had a lovely algae bloom in this well over the last months, and now the turbidity is really high from those algae, and that's causing us problems. So you can see the algae in the channel that's inside the plant, and that water will be going into the filter. So our filters clog really fast, and it ends up not being a good system. Here's another thing that's going on in India. You can't just think about one piece of the project. You think about the whole system, and the whole system is complicated for many reasons. And I get excited about thinking about what's actually happening at the household level, and at the household level, they don't actually have any way to store the water that they're being given, if they were given the amount that they were supposed to be given, which isn't happening either, okay? So I caught this shot when I was in India of, here's a woman carrying water in the village, and presumably she has all the water she needs coming to her house. Why is she doing that? Well, I have a video too of what's happening at the household level. There's a tap, there's a bucket, the bucket fills up, and they don't have any place to put additional water, and so they lose the rest of the water that's being sent to them. So the point is, the whole infrastructure has to be looked at to think about how do you actually make this so that this is a really viable and effective system for these communities. So what are our lessons learned? I think one of the big takeaways is you have to think about the whole ecosystem of what is there to support adding a new technology. So you need technical partners that can assist in deploying it. You need a system for long-term technical assistance to keep systems running. You need people on site who can do capacity building in the communities. And we're working at these things with partners in India, but we've got a ways to go yet. So those are some of the tasks, next steps that Our Work Tata LLC is working on. Getting a well cover built that will stop the algae from growing in the village of Gufu. They're going to begin training the operators, collect data about how the systems actually perform, and so on. Other things that are in the works. I invited 2 delegates from India, one from Tata Trust and one from Pradhan, to come along on the trip to Honduras. I take 20-some students to Honduras every January, and I realized we need to cross-fertilize here, and we want the team from India to know what's happening in Honduras so they can think about how would that work back in their own context. So that's one of the goals for the next few weeks, next month, how's that? And ultimately our goal is to find innovative ways to bring safe water on tap to Indian villages and towns, and we're in an innovation time, and there's going to be lots of innovation over the coming years to figure out how to do that really well. And I think with that, I'll end. And I just want to say that the reason I'm ducking out is not because I don't want to be here, but I have to go talk to my 26 students I'm taking to Honduras in January about pre-trip things, so I need to leave. But thank you.
Thanks, Monroe. Just to let you know, we're actually not going to take questions and answers after each presentation, but we do have a reception after all of the presentations are done, and you can ask questions over a glass of wine at that point. Okay. Now I'd like to invite Soumya Gupta. Soumya, as I said, was our first PhD student to have spent a year in the field, and she got back from her year in the field. And I actually spent a couple of days in the field when Soumya was there. And it was just incredible to see how she was managing over 20 investigators running around the village and doing surveys, but also taking blood samples of women and taking heights and weights of babies. And she was doing all this, managing this whole group, and being very calm, very relaxed, and came back with a lot of very interesting data. So I'll let Soumya talk about that.
I'm the one who came back. So I do have a lot of stories. I was not as calm as Prabhu says I was. I was actually just the opposite. I was calm on the day that he was there because my team knew that he was going to be there, and they were like on their best behavior. So my dissertation research is looking at women's empowerment and iron status in 3 different farming systems in a place called Chandrapur, which is in the state of Maharashtra. And I'll just briefly talk about what I've been up to and some preliminary results. So the reason I'm looking at women is that they do form a significant part of the agricultural labor force in India, especially in Maharashtra, which is my field site. And that it has been documented that there is a sort of gender gap when it comes to women's control over income, women's access to productive resources, and then that influences their degree to make decisions about childcare, make decisions about food intake, healthcare, and so on. Women are also one of the most vulnerable groups when it comes to iron deficiency, and iron deficiency is probably one of the most prevalent micronutrient deficiencies that's there today. Specifically, anemia is a public health concern in India, and even in Maharashtra, about 50% of the women are anemic. Also, there have been some studies that have looked at changes in cropping systems, and it's often been said that when India went through its green revolution, there was a change in the pattern of consumption away from coarse cereals towards rice and wheat, and that was associated with an increase in the prevalence of anemia. But there are other people who've said that while the intake of iron did not really change, the bioavailability did not fall. So effectively, the net iron that was being absorbed did not decline. And so it's kind of interesting to see that you have this intake of iron and then you have an extent to which iron is being absorbed, and that is influenced by an interplay of what food items make up your diet. So this is India, and that is Maharashtra. And towards the eastern part of Maharashtra is a district called Chandrapur. And we basically selected 3 farming clusters in this district. One was food crop, which is, not sure how to use this, which is the green district that you can see. And then there was the cash crop system, which is highlighted in yellow. And there's a mixed crop district that's highlighted in orange. We surveyed a total of 960 households. We interviewed 2 people from each household, an index man and an index woman. We excluded pregnant and lactating women. For this survey, we also collaborated with 2 institutions in India. There was Tata Institute of Social Science in Bombay, and then there was a medical college in Wardha, which is close to Chandrapur. The survey collected information on agriculture, it collected information on access to food, off-farm employment of both men and women, empowerment in agriculture, and specifically for women, it also looked at dietary intake. So we had 2 ways of looking at that. One was a 24-hour dietary recall, and one was semi-quantitative food frequency based on a 30-day recall. We also collected blood assays. This was only for the women in the sample. The women were of the reproductive age group, so that's 15 to 49 years of age. And we have a very low non-response rate, which I'm really proud of. Out of 960 women, 948 gave us blood samples. So that's a pretty good thing about the study. We collected information on 3 specific assays for iron deficiency and then 2 for infections, just to account for the fact that inflammation might influence values of iron assays. So this survey was done with the help of 30 other people who we recruited and who we trained. And this whole fieldwork experience was just crazy. I know that it's my country and I should have been expecting everything that happened, but nothing prepared me for just how many things are involved and just how much of a difference there is in approaching research while you're here versus approaching it in India when you're collaborating with people who just work with very different constraints and so cannot think of things in the same way that you're made to believe in here. And it was completely I still cannot believe that it's over and I've come back. But I think it was also extremely important for me because it's nice to know what all goes into that effort, and that before we actually get data to work with, there's like a whole lot behind the scenes. And also I feel that contextually it's very, very important because a lot of things might not show up in the data, but they can be very important in sort of explaining the story behind the data. So all in all, it was good. I'm glad I went. And I encourage everyone else to go too. So I'm just going to go through a few preliminary results now. They're mostly with the nutrition data because that's mostly what I've been analyzing. So this slide is showing you results for dietary intake, which is the first 3 rows, and then iron status, which is the next couple of rows below that. And what you basically see is that I have 3 different indicators for dietary intake. One is a 8-point score of diet diversity based on a 24-hour recall. That's the first row. And then there's a dichotomous diet diversity score based off of that. That's the second row. And then there's a weighted frequency of intake score. That's the third one, the food consumption score. And what you see is that in each of these 3 cases, the greatest diet diversity is in my cash crop region. And the lowest one is in the food crop block that we surveyed. And these differences are significant. So there are significant differences across the 3 groups for each of the 3 indicators. And that is something I would have expected, that a cash crop system would have a greater diet diversity just because presumably you get income from selling your cash crop and then you can use that to purchase different kinds of foods. What's interesting is the iron status. There are 3 stages of iron deficiency, and for each of those 3 stages, I get a very high prevalence in my cash crop region, and the lowest prevalence in the food crop region. So stage 1 iron deficiency, almost half of the sample in the cash crop block was iron deficient, whereas it's less than 40% in my food crop group. This was not expected because the assumption I was working with was that a higher diet diversity would mean a lower incidence of iron deficiency. But if I go into the food groups that make up the diet diversity, I find that there might be a greater intake of different kinds of foods in the cash crop system, but the bioavailability of iron as a whole is lower because of an interplay of substances that inhibit the absorption of iron from the diet. And this is just giving you a breakdown of the mean frequency of consumption over a 30-day period for individuals in the 3 farming systems, and it's for each of the 8 food groups. And if you focus on the rows that are highlighted in green, so that's the vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables and other fruits and vegetables, those are the ones where there is a significant difference across the 3 pairs. So if I can compare either any of the 2 food farming systems, I get a significant difference in the consumption. And if you look at the rows that are highlighted in orange, those are the food groups for which 2 out of 3 pairs are significantly different between these 3 farming systems. And to some extent, this mean frequency of intake does explain why we might be seeing a higher prevalence of iron deficiency in the cash crop zone as opposed to the food crop zone. This isn't final. I expect this to change as I account for many other variables. But as of now, this is what we're seeing. And I think it still brings up an interesting story of the whole debate between intake and absorption of iron. My study is also looking at women's empowerment in agriculture, which is based off of an index that IFPRI just came out with about 2 years back, I guess. And I'm excited to see how empowerment levels influence both women's dietary diversity and iron deficiency status. So once I get those results, it should be an interesting story. And of course, I need to account for a lot of other variables. I need to account for agriculture, I need to account for household level variables. Caste is another thing that would be very important, I think, in this context. So those are the next steps. And that's the story so far.
Thanks, Soumya. Actually, it was really important to have Soumya go out and spend a year in the field and come back to tell the story, because one, she sets a high standard and high bar for everybody else to meet, and second, it also shows that you can do high quality PhD research on the ground and really collect very unique data. And the data kind of starts to speak to you when you're on the ground and you're actually collecting it. And that's very unique, and it's a life-forming experience. So we at TCIU will continue to use this model as we go forward. Speaking about data speaking to people, I think our summer interns really learned that firsthand also. And we're going to have our summer interns come and present what they did over the summer. Christian and Katie Merkel and Andy Pike. Three of you, are you going to do a joint celebration or joint presentation, not celebration? Together? Or are you coming one by one?
Together.
Together, okay.
So we have a quick video, kind of just showing the basics of what we did this summer, and then we'll talk about further into it after. India today is home to nearly 1/7 of the world's population, with incredible diversity and complexity. Despite recent advancements in agricultural production and economic growth fueled by the expanding middle class, India still suffers from high rates of malnutrition, hunger, and poverty. Since the majority of rural households in India depend on small plots of land and traditional markets for food and income, there are strong links between agricultural development and nutrition outcomes. Understanding these links and collecting this kind of data, however, is often challenging, time-consuming, and extremely difficult to standardize. There is a need for tools capable of identifying the minimum amount of nutritional information necessary to understand these links all over the world. So, with this in mind, we at the Tata-Cornell Agriculture and Nutrition Initiative set out to design the minimum nutrition data set for agriculture, a set of survey tools capable of capturing the most essential dietary information in a simple, time-efficient method that can be included in existing agricultural surveys. The Minimum Nutrition Data Set for Agriculture, or the MNDA, consists of 5 modules: anthropometric indicators, biochemical markers, dietary diversity scoring and food access, intra-household allocation of food metrics, and early childhood care in the first 1,000 days. Beginning with the Dietary Diversity and Food Access module of the MNDA, a group of Cornell student interns was assembled to work out of ICRSAT, one of TCI's partner institutions, in Hyderabad, Telangana. Upon arriving at ICRSAT, we began by designing our survey tools and preparing for data collection in the field. To achieve our goal of developing a simple, efficient dietary diversity tool, we targeted 4 villages, Dokur and Orapalli in Telangana, and Kanzada and Kinked in Maharashtra, for household surveying. Our surveys were designed with women ages 18 to 45 responsible for cooking as the household representatives, and respondents were asked about everything that they and their family had eaten over the last 3 days in a 3-day recall method. Additionally, we held focus group discussions to cross-check our information and made observations about local markets. In the villages, we partnered with our in-field investigators to translate our survey information during household interviews. Establishing strong relationships with our in-field investigators was essential for us to be able to conduct the surveys efficiently and develop a rapport with the community. We took our meals with our research partners and homestay families, and often slept under the stars. Overall, we completed a total of 144 household surveys and 9 focus group discussions in a span of 2 weeks, as well as connected with real families over the shared experience of food and diet. By collecting this information and assigning dietary diversity scores based on food groups defined by the Food and Agriculture Organization, we were interested in seeing how our results compared to intensive nutrition survey data collected by ICRSAT for the same households. If the results were similar, then the Dietary Diversity module could be used as a simple and accessible tool for researchers from all backgrounds to evaluate levels of nutrition and dietary diversity in agricultural surveys. Overall, we think that this tool shows a lot of promise for future research methods linking agricultural development with policy initiatives and nutritional outcomes in India and abroad. So I'm going to start. My name is Christian Dorado Owens. I'm a senior in development sociology, and I was the bearded guy in the film, and one of the interns working on the dietary diversity module of the MNDA this summer. So we're going to be talking a little bit about our experiences in the field and also reflect on the research process, while Katie Ricketts is going to be talking more about the conclusions and analysis of our research process later in a different presentation. Before we do that, however, on behalf of everybody standing here and the other interns who aren't here, I wanted to thank everybody at ICRSAT, namely Dr. Pengali, Katie Ricketts, Mary Catherine French, and Dr. Pinstrup Anderson, for giving us this opportunity. I know I speak for everybody here when I say that it was a tremendous learning experience. We went through the entirety of the research process, from refining our questions to developing the surveys, collecting the data, and doing our analysis at ICRSAT, as well as got the opportunity to build relationships and share food with real families in India whom otherwise we would never have gotten the chance to meet. So thank you very much. So I'm going to also be talking a little bit about survey design, how survey design reflects the purpose of the MNDA, and also the future of this survey in the context of research at TCI. So developing a simple set of survey tools capable of capturing the minimum amount of nutritional information necessary to understand the links between agriculture and nutrition involve really intense discussions over a span of 2 weeks with our supervisors at ICRSAT, our senior advisors, and also with Katie, under the guidance of Katie Ricketts. And additionally to that, we were able to do some pre-testing in villages located in close proximity to our target villages in Telangana. Some of the important conceptual components of the survey design, which I think are worth mentioning, were ascertaining that the efficacy of using the woman as a single dietary household proxy, trying to figure out which dietary recall method was most appropriate based on the purpose of the MNDA, and also trying to adapt our surveys and our focus group discussions to local context, which I think was very important for reasons just that we needed to know about common foods that we're eating and to validate our assumptions about dietary norms, about meal times, and also to inform our probing mechanisms while actually conducting the surveys. So for these reasons, this is kind of how us approaching our survey design was reflective of us trying to actually create a minimum nutrition data set through this dietary diversity survey. When thinking about the future of this survey in the context of research at TCI, it's also important to think about standardization in terms of universal adaptability, so that this survey can be actually used across different contexts and can be standardized in such a way that it can be used not only in India but in all places across the world. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Andy, and thank you.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Christian. Okay, I'm Andy. I'm going to be talking about the implementation of the survey across the 4 villages in Telangana and Maharashtra and implications of this experience on the generalizability of the MNDA to other countries. So in our field experience, we had 2 components, the focus group discussions and interviews. In the focus group discussions, we use those to become more familiar with the community and cross-check assumptions on common foods eaten, so like what to probe for in interviews, and meal times, dietary and consumption norms, cooking responsibilities, food sources, and food items consumed on special days. And then in the interview component, we actually administered the survey with the help of a field investigator who translated the questions and captured the data on dietary diversity. So the goal of our time in the field was to effectively implement our survey instrument to accurately capture information on dietary diversity. And so based on the experience in the field and the goal, there are some takeaways for generalizing the MNDA to other countries. It was immensely helpful partnering with ICRISAT. They handled all the logistics and provided facilities. When we stayed with them in Hyderabad, we also we stayed in their offices in the villages. So they handled transport, food, housing, so we could focus on data collection. That was immensely helpful. It was also very helpful because we could draw on the experience of their staff who've been doing this for years, and they're really experts in the field. And they helped us understand the context surrounding the data that we were collecting, which is extremely important because it improves the quality of your actual data collection in the field and your analysis later. For example, like what to probe for in interviews and ways to adjust the survey instrument to improve performance. So senior employees at ICRISAT, some honorable mentions, Padmaja, Kavita, Mohan Rao, they helped us link what we were seeing in the villages with the broader issues surrounding dietary diversity. They also helped us critique the performance of our survey design. But I think a key takeaway of field experience is actually that the field investigators are a really vital ingredient in successfully generalizing this research tool, the survey instrument, to other countries. So who were these field investigators? Well, they were women in their early 20s. They were trained by ICRISAT in administering what they call their village level survey, an intensive nutrition survey. And they actually lived in the villages and were part of the community. And so why were they so important to us? We relied on them to accurately and impartially relay our questions and responses to the villages that we were interviewing. And they were really good at what they did, and having quality field investigators is vital. Not only did they have experience at administering surveys, they were friends with the respondents and families, which helped us build our own relationship with those families, and the women who we were interviewing felt comfortable answering our questions, and I think that improved the accuracy of our data. They also explained customs and greetings, and which is extremely important for cultural sensitivity when you're going into a foreign field. That's something you should be very aware of. They provided context in the form of household occupations, issues facing the villagers. They were very knowledgeable about food preparation, ingredient names, and yes. So before this experience, I did not realize how important my relationships and communication styles were to the data collection process. I think going forward, it's very important that the researchers build relationships with households and field investigators. Living in villages definitely helps this. When we administer the surveys, we were living in the villages. And also, a rigorous training program before implementing the surveys would be important. Role-playing, particularly, was very effective at, clarifying the survey methodology, identifying what you like in the interview, so that they would answer, not just what the ingredients you're asking for, but also explain the broader issues that the villagers were talking about. And without further ado, I will introduce Katie to our next talk.
Hi, my name is Catherine Merkel. I was part of this team as well. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the experience we had doing the actual data analysis. So very few of us had actually had any previous experience doing this sort of analysis on data that we collected. So this experience gave us a chance in a really intensive environment to not only learn the software to analyze the data, but also learn the techniques and some of the important considerations you have to take into account when you're analyzing data. The first of these lessons that I think we all learned was the importance of context when you're analyzing your data. So often, data analysis takes place hundreds or even thousands of miles away from where the actual data was collected, and you can really often lose touch of what you're looking at when you see those numbers. So we had a really unique experience of being able to analyze these data right after interviewing the women, literally days after meeting them. And with that, we got to see how important it was to take into account the things that we had seen and the things that we had learned while we were in their houses and speaking with them. We met women who were fasting but were still eating food. So that sounds a little paradoxical, but knowing that helped us to understand better some strange scores that we were seeing that depended highly on the day. We were able to know when they were at the market and perhaps had eaten a special snack that day. It was also Ramadan during the time of our interviews, which we noted that there were definitely families that ate huge meals at 4 a.m. and then wouldn't eat anything else for the rest of the day. So when we were analyzing these data, we found that this showed up in our results, and because we knew of these issues, we were able to take them into account when we were generating our conclusions. The second lesson that I think we all really understood better after this experience was the importance of being adaptable and working within the limitations of the study. So all studies have limitations. You can't collect every single piece of data for everybody that you talk to. But with this survey, because it was designed specifically to be minimal, we had minimal data to work with, and so we had to make the best of that analysis within those limitations. And I think being able to use the resources at ICRSAT that we had in better understanding the patterns of diet in the area and better understanding the lives of the women that we had interviewed, we were able to draw better conclusions using this minimal data that we had collected and really make the best of it as the MNDA seeks to do. Thirdly, as I mentioned, taking advantage of the resources that you have available to you while you're analyzing your data. It was invaluable, the experience that our field enumerators brought to this process, as well as the ICRSAT staff that we were working with, and we can't thank them enough for certain. I remember one particular instance where at night I was up instant messaging with my field enumerator on Facebook, and we just had an hour-long conversation about the ingredients of certain Indian dishes, and she helped me to figure out what some of these vegetables were that had only local names, and we didn't even have translations for them in English. But we had to know what they were so that when we put them in our survey, into our analysis, we knew where they fit in. Were they a green leafy vegetable or were they a root vegetable? So that I think the takeaway that we all got from this experience, both in the analysis and just in the internship in general, is that we all, I believe, experienced a shift in the way that we view research. And this was a really unique experience in that it wasn't abstract or theoretical. Nobody handed us a data set and said, see what you can learn from this. We actually went out and collected the data. We met the women whose numbers we were working with. Each of these numbers told a story about a woman in a village that we had met, sat in her home, and played with her children. And I believe that will stay with me, I know, for the rest of my research career, and I believe with these fellows as well. So thank you, Dr. Pengali, MC, Katie, for this wonderful experience.
So we had one other summer intern, Alex King, who was not with this group, but who was based in Mumbai at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and he was working on looking at fortification and how fortification is being used in the Indian food industry. So Alex, come and present your results.
That's probably the biggest my name has ever been on a TV before. So my name is Alexander King. I'm a senior studying international agriculture and rural development here. And so this past summer, as you guys have heard, I was actually at the Tata Institute for Social Sciences in in Mumbai, India. So actually, first of all, I'm going to talk about a bit how I approached the research, and then also mostly about the experience. One of the really cool things that I got to do while I was here was actually stay at an Indian university and really work with people who were there. So everything from comparing different research projects that the other students were doing there to even eating at the canteen at 1 a.m. as we were trying to finish our papers, and even like fighting off the monkeys who were trying to take my vada pav. It was a really sort of immersive experience that would be difficult to do otherwise. So now on to what I was actually studying there. So I was looking at the problem of iron deficiency and the ways that markets are trying to address this problem. So as you can see from some of the numbers here, it's an extremely prevalent issue and very widespread in India. When you're looking at something where over half of women in the country are affected by this, there needs to be some sort of action taken. So with this, I sort of began asking the question, how can markets begin to sort of meet this need that's demanded by different health issues throughout the country? And what are different ways that it can be addressed? So here's sort of an outline of my approach. I started very general, looking at the diet. How are people not getting iron from their foods? And sort of moving their way down into what people aren't getting from foods, and how is availability of the actual products factoring into that. So to look at this next part, the product availability, I was actually lucky enough to be able to look at some supermarkets, which was very interesting. I went to 3 different ones in the Mumbai area, and then also in some rural areas as well. I checked out some smaller markets, and that was a pretty interesting scene, sort of seeing that the differences there. From there, I needed to see what people were actually buying. What's available is one thing, but what people actually have in their carts is a different thing completely. So with that, I was sort of standing at checkout lines, looking and trying to take pictures. Fun fact, people don't like it when you take pictures of their grocery store purchases. I learned that from the security guards after my first time there. So then after that, I needed to see how people were actually using the foods themselves. And through this, I actually got to spend some time with some different cooks, with the Tata Institute chef who was working at the guest house I was staying. He showed me some of the techniques, and really the way that you use the food that you're getting has tremendous impact on actual uptake ability. So looking at all of these things sort of formed the context in which I was going to select the 4 products that I was going to do greater in-depth study with through interviews. Looking at the 4 products, I narrowed it down based on 3 different criteria. So it needed to be fairly widespread. And for that one, I chose the Tata Salt Plus, which is a double fortified salt. That means that it has iron and iodine. It's a newer product that's just being released through Tata now. I wanted something that was packaged. The packaged food industry is exploding in India right now, and that was very apparent through my supermarket visits. So with that, I chose the Britannia Tiger Biscuit, and also a product that had actually failed, the Lihar Iron Chusti. So seeing that really helped put into context the ways that different packaged foods are trying to meet this problem as well. And then finally, I wanted to look at a staple crop. And for that, I chose it's a combination of a nonprofit and also a seed company putting together a product, and it was the pearl millet fortified with iron through Harvest Plus. Finally, looking at all these things together, it sort of formed a unique experience for me. I got to sort of contextualize the urban and rural divide through different trips. I was lucky to be able to go and travel around the country a bit. I went to Delhi for different conferences and then also to Hyderabad to visit the other interns, which was great. But the main thing that I got to see was the ways that different sectors within development interact and how they either move forward together or sometimes work against each other. I remember specifically having an experience where at the seed company, they had developed this new technology where iron was actually being incorporated into the pearl millet at 15% higher rates than before. But there was no market for this. So seeing the way that like this seed company couldn't actually get the product into the supermarket with this attribute really kind of showed the difficulties that lie ahead in fortification in general. And finally, probably the best thing about this experience was really getting to get a meaningful engagement with my studies. And if you recall, my major is international agriculture and rural development, and that's something that's hard to get experience with in Ithaca, New York. So thank you so much.
So those were our summer interns, and given the experience of this set of summer interns, they actually came back and spent this semester doing a reflective seminar course with me. And so at the end of this semester, they'll be getting a grade which will cover their time in the field plus the paper they write up during the semester and the presentation from that. I'll be grading them next week, so they have to be good to me today. The other point I'd like to make is it was kind of heartening to see that two of them have decided to go back to India and take up a job in India. So Andy Pike and Alex King are heading back to India this summer, and they're going to work for Mahindra company, which happens to be a competitor to Tata's. So I'm not sure what's going on here. But they've both been accepted as regular employees of an Indian company, and they're heading back. So that also says quite a bit about the experience itself. Katie Ricketts actually managed the internship program. As most of you know, Katie is the research program manager of the Tata-Cornell program since its inception. And I'll be saying something more about Katie later on, but Katie put together an overall summary of what came out of the data and the analysis from that, and I think it'll be good for her to share that. Katie?
Great, thanks so much. So I'm the current program and research manager. I came in shortly after Prabhu arrived, and we sat across the table and we said, we have to build a program. And so it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you and celebrating our progress. So it's exciting. MC, who's been running around and making sure we have all of our I's crossed, or I's dotted and T's crossed. It's been an invaluable part of our program. So I'm so proud to be here, and it's also great when your interns make you look so good. As Prabhu mentioned, I managed the intern program and also helped to develop the tools for the minimum nutrition data set. And backing up real quick, I don't know if you caught it, but on the video that Christian showed, which again, special round of applause for Christian because he did all the editing and development of that video and really did an excellent job. We had mentioned a couple different areas that the minimum nutrition data set was going to be looking at. So we had mentioned early childhood care, the first 1,000 days, things like intra-household allocation of food, anthropometry, biochemical indicators, as well as dietary diversity. And so we decided to choose dietary diversity as one of our first areas that we would make progress with. So this is one area of many future pilots that we'll be working on, in addition to those others, to create sort of a comprehensive minimum nutrition data set for agriculture set. So I'll go ahead and just share really briefly some of our preliminary results that are coming out. And actually today we had our paper finally be published in the New York Academy of Sciences. So it says in press in your packets, but it's actually there, so you can go look for it. So I mentioned we start with dietary diversity. Why capture dietary diversity? It's a has been long recognized as an important aspect of health. Again, strong evidence for linking low dietary diversity towards for micronutrient inadequacies. And as we'll show later, this is important not only for hunger and malnutrition in terms of lack of access to food, but also overnutrition trends that we're seeing in India as well. So vitamin A and iron deficiency anemia, both of which have important links to diets, are some of the two biggest components of the global burden of disease. So as I mentioned, it was an important area for us to start. Again, this contributes towards cognitive development effects, physical development, and work capacity, caring practices. And so really this was something that we felt like was really important that we start to make progress on for closing the gap of agriculture and nutrition and really providing an empirical basis for how those two things really link together. So the pilot went forward as such. We had access to, ICRSAT had been doing this intensive nutrition survey in villages all over India. Meanwhile, ICRSAT also does a large-scale agriculture survey, which they've been doing for 60, 70 years at this point. So they were a really natural partner for us to start thinking about how we could streamline nutrition metrics in these existing agriculture surveys, in addition to the fact that they were doing this intensive survey that we could find out, how different is our sort of rapid-fire nutrition survey to this intensive survey? Do we get the same results? And would it be useful? So the first question we had to ask is, would it be accurate? What are the dietary diversity information that we would be getting? Is it comparable? The second was, is it advantageous? Is there operational advantages to why one would want to use this in an agriculture survey versus doing an intensive nutrition thing? And I should also mention that our goal is not to reduce the need to have intensive nutrition surveys. We know that those answer incredibly important questions, many of which a minimum set couldn't accomplish. But again, we want to offer the opportunity for more, I guess, a better way to collect this type of data so that we can start making the links between agriculture surveys and nutrition. So those were really our goals when we set out to collect the data for the minimum nutrition data set, focusing on dietary diversity and comparing it to the intensive nutrition survey. This is, again, just a brief review of some of the results. So what you're seeing here is the means of two different scores that women got after being asked about their diets. And so on the top, you see the minimum nutrition data set, and this is the women's dietary diversity score. And we measured that against the same households that were measured. So again, women got two scores. They got a score from the approach that we use with the minimum set. And we measured that against the same score that ICRSAT had received from giving them, these women, the intensive nutrition survey. So then it was really just about comparing the two types of scores against each other to see how different they were. And what we found is that once we started to do this analysis is that essentially we're collecting the same information, which most of the time in science that's bad. But that was actually really good for us because we're trying to say that we can collect essentially the same type of information in a much more streamlined way, and that it wasn't going to be burdensome for people doing agriculture surveys to use this type of approach to also collect nutrition data. And on average, the data was collected in about 27 minutes, which is an improvement to the intensive nutrition survey method. So there's that. When we look across BMI groups, and again, that's body mass index, we're interested to know, do the scores differ based on the fact that these women, when women were either overweight, normal, or underweight. And so we had all this anthropometric data from, again, these same women because ICRSAT had been doing this intensive nutrition survey. So we were able to see how the different scores for dietary diversity might match within these subgroups of BMI. And again, when we compare the results between these two, so the different colors represent the ICRSAT intensive survey and our survey, You can see the relatively similar distributions, and when you do tests between the two, you find out that there's no differences, again, amongst all these groups. So it's just sort of hitting home the point that we're collecting the similar information as the intensive survey. Okay, one other thing that we collected, actually there's a couple other additional things that I should tell you that our nutrition survey or our dietary diversity module also collects that is unusual and but important to understanding more about diets. So one is the behavior around eating out. When you're asking about diets in India, you're often talking about what women are eating and what they're making, and that's usually coming from diets or from food that's consumed inside the home. We wanted to know something about what kids were eating outside of the home and how important that was when we were asking women about their children's diets, or when we were getting an understanding about how important processed and packaged foods are to diets. Was. And so we have a few additional questions aside from just a dietary recall about children eating out and women eating out, and trying to understand the prevalence of those types of behaviors. Interestingly, what we found is that when you talk to women about their children or other people in their household who are eating out, you find out it's very popular, people are doing it all the time, except if you're a woman and except if you're a mother, meaning that you're not spending as much time eating outside of the home, which is interesting because there's reasons to think that may be changing, that may be sort of a generational thing that might be shifting as women spend more time outside of the home, but especially for things like fortified foods and stuff like that, when we're trying to reach women, we need to know things like where are these people actually getting their food from. And that brings me to the second point that I was going to mention, is that along with collecting dietary information about what they're eating, we're also asking women, or our tool also asks women where they are getting this food from in terms of where they're purchasing this food. So is it at a local market? Is it from a vendor that's coming directly to their house? And that can be important from a policy point of view because it shows where you can target for certain types of foods in terms of like how people will access it. And if you'll be actually targeting and reaching the group that you're interested in affecting. So, thanks. I'm regretting the 5-slide cap I put on everyone today, because there's a lot more to say, but I'm happy to discuss further and answer any questions. And thanks.
The 5-slide rule was crucial, otherwise people would have talked a lot. Just to mention, will be Katie Ricketts, who came in as the research program manager, has moved to Colorado, and she will be ending her term with us by the end of this month. And Jessica Ames has just joined us last week as the incoming program manager. So we'll have a couple more words on Katie in a few minutes' time. But another area of work that TCI started is on spatial analysis. A lot of times one collects household data and does lots of intense work with household data. But if you're really thinking about research priority setting, targeting technologies, etc., you need to have a much better understanding of how problems are distributed across space, across a country, across a region, etc. And that allows you to be much better in targeting particular interventions, policy interventions, technology interventions to areas which need it the most. And so this is an effort we've just started, and Hillary has joined our team as a research assistant, and she's been pulling together some spatial data for India. And what she's going to do today is give you a flavor for the types of spatial analysis that are possible. This is just the very beginning of a long process that we need to go through to get very sophisticated spatial analysis going. But Hilary Byerly is here to give you a presentation on where we are today.
Hi, everyone. As Prabhu said, I'm Hillary. I'm a master's student here in AIM and also a research assistant with TCI. And as he said, much of my work so far has been really leveraging these countrywide data sets and spatial tools such as GIS to sort of depict the agricultural landscape in India and to sort of understand how that's changed over time. The idea is that with a more complete picture of what grows where, we can identify and target interventions that really link agricultural production with human nutrition. Now, which button do I push? The big one. Okay, thanks. Now, the data that we've used mostly so far is at the district level, and those are these black administrative boundaries here. And it's mostly area and production of major crops from the late 1960s to the late 2000s. One of our first projects here was to sort of look at how dominant cropping patterns have changed over the last 40 years. And as you'll see in the 1960s, when most farmers practiced subsistence agriculture, the landscape was really dominated by coarse cereals here in yellow. And then also other grains, rice and green and wheat and blue. But then as you fast forward to the late 2000s, the coarse cereals have really declined in terms of their dominance. And you see cash crops like oilseeds in red and cotton in gray and fruits and vegetables popping up. Additionally, you really see the concentration of rice and wheat cultivation in that northern belt, that sort of teal color. And when you zoom in sort of more specifically on cereal production, indeed you see in the 1960s that sort of even spread of cereal area under cereals, and anywhere from 40 to 80% of gross cropped area was under cereals. But then more recently, it's really concentrated up in that northern region where we know that the Green Revolution has sort of focused its efforts and been most effective. That central area, though, we can kind of dig a little bit deeper and look at how maybe how cropping diversity is changing across time. This Simpson Index of Diversity is effectively a measure of the number of crops in a given district and the respective proportion of each crop. So it moves from 0 to 1, 0 being complete specialization. This is kind of the brown color. And then as it moves towards 1, you see more diversity. And again, more recently, you really see these sort of diverging trends where in that northern belt of rice wheat, it's really just cereals. But in central and southern India, there is more diversity in the crops that are grown. And looking at implications for nutritious crops in particular, we have really this time series data on pulses and fruits and vegetables. And here, as we look at the change, so the percentage point change in these crops as they comprise gross cropped area from the 1960s to the 2000s, you see, with the exception of the loss of pulses in the north, both fruits and vegetables and pulses have seen some increase, that green, in area, in their role in total gross cropped area. But neither really has seen that sort of widespread growth that you might hope to see to meet nutritional requirements for the population. But the story with milk is a bit more compelling. Here, as we're looking at the ratio of female to male cows in buffalo, you can see in the late 1960s, most of the country is kind of covered in that blue and the dark blue and the light blue, and that's either more male than female animals or approximately equal populations. But then more recently, there's really been a stark increase in the north and the south, perhaps as a response to demand for milk or the mechanization of agriculture. But then that pocket there in the eastern India really hasn't changed in those 40 years. And so it's these sorts of gaps that sort of illuminate need and sort of show us the value of this type of spatial analysis, and where we might start to ask questions like why this is the case. We know it's rain-fed and poor, but what other variables around infrastructure, demographics, climate, labor can we start to look at to see why India remains one of the most malnourished countries in the world, and where specifically within India we should be targeting our work.
So that brings to the end our presentations from the various students here within the TCI team. Now I have the pleasure of going to the next sets of talks, just two more. So, and then we'll break up for the reception. It's been a great pleasure to actually work with an advisory board that's very, very supportive of our work. And Per Pinstrup Anderson, the chair of our advisory board, a long-term friend and a long-term collaborator, has been just wonderful to work with. And his advice has helped us shape this program. And Per, I'd like you to come and say a few words.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Prabhu announced this get-together as a celebration, and it really is. This is a celebration of the tremendous progress that TCI has made during a very short period of time under Prabhu Pingali's leadership. I encourage you to read the report. I read it this morning. It adds to the presentations that we've been able to hear this afternoon in the short period of time that we have. Efforts to make the food system more nutrition sensitive, to use that jargon, is really a hot topic these days. It is being discussed in so many national and international fora. The second International Conference on Nutrition just completed in Rome, and it focused on that. There is a large number of initiatives to try to understand how the food systems can be made more nutrition friendly, how we can improve nutrition by changing the food systems. However, they are almost all conceptual. Much of the writing is done at 30,000 feet, whether it's in an airplane or it's conceptually. What we lack is field level data. And this is where TCI is finding itself. What TCI is doing and should continue to do is to develop, is to generate solid, policy-relevant empirical evidence based on field-level data and scientifically valid analysis. And that is the kind of thing we've been hearing this afternoon. This is the kind of thing that TCI should be doing. We need this kind of field-based analytical approaches so that we can help policymakers make the right decisions. The worldwide efforts to strengthen the positive nutrition impact of food systems, I think, are best described as creative anarchy. We really need more leadership. There are so many initiatives, and they really do not come together in any kind of a cohesive effort. And I think this is a role that TCI could begin to play as it grows older. We, and that means the advisory board, recommend to use the funding stability that's provided by the Tata funds to get additional funding and to expand the program beyond India, say over the next 1 to 2 years. I discussed this with Prabhu, and he prefers 2 years rather than 1. And I totally agree. TCI has to establish itself firmly in India before it becomes a truly international program, but it has the prospects of becoming much more than an India program. We also recommend that TCI continues to draw on all of the disciplines available at Cornell. I believe as it grows older again, it can begin to play a much bigger role in trying to provide leadership to all of the food systems activities that are going on here at this university. It's really been a pleasure to work with Prabhu and to work with the advisory board together with 8 outstanding individuals during the last year and a half. It is great to be associated with success, and I wish you continued success in the future.
And now for a final word, we have Max Pfeffer, the Senior Associate Dean from the College of Agriculture.
Thanks. So nice to see everybody here. What a crowd here on Friday afternoon. I'm really impressed with everybody, but it's good to be here and to see such great presentations. First of all, I think we ought to start by congratulating the presenters. I think it's just a beautiful job this afternoon, and I think that what's most impressive and heartening to me is the work that the students have been doing. And you guys have been doing a great job, and TCI is doing a great job in getting the internships going and getting the students out there in the field, as Prabhu mentioned before. So important. This fits very much with the strategic priorities of both the university and the college, and you've heard a lot of talk about the internationalization of the student experience. And the idea is that we become more international, that we have more international experiences, more meaningful international experiences. And I would say that TCI is leading the way. It's a role model for the rest of the university. So it's really wonderful to see that. I also want to note Prabhu's leadership. Per is absolutely right. It's just wonderful to have Prabhu here and doing the leadership. And I would characterize Prabhu as a generous leader. And by that I mean he's a leader who is inclusive. He has a vision. He prepares a vision. He has others that share in that vision and brings them in to realize this. And we're starting to see the fruits of this after just 1 year. So wonderful kind of thing. Per, I want to thank you and the advisory board because this has been something that's been a long time coming, as many of us know. And the advisory board stayed true and enthusiastic for a long time, until we got to the point of having Prabhu here and in the driver's seat and helping realize this great vision. So I think that's just wonderful, and I thank all of you for that. I would say, to follow on Dean Boer's comments early on, that the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is really proud to be the academic home of TCI. By the way, who did this? It's pretty nice. I like it. Yeah. So I was already thinking I'm going to point to this. Yeah. We're really proud to be the academic home for TCI. Very sincerely. There's a couple of things that I would point out that are really important in thinking about this. TCI and the work that's being done here builds on the tradition of international agriculture and nutrition in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, which I think is a very proud one. Being here in this building in Warren Hall, in the 1920s, we had agricultural economists going to China at the time of famine. We had plant breeders going to China in the time of famine, doing work that had in the same spirit as what TCI is doing now. And of course, now we're using the most modern technology of all kinds to do our analyses. So that's one thing that makes me really happy about having TCI in the college. The other thing is that TCI contributes to the mission of our college that Dean Boer mentioned before, which is producing and disseminating knowledge with public purpose. And we try to do that in the areas of environmental science, life science, social science, and also in the area of food and food systems, food and agricultural systems. We try to do a few things that I think TCI is trying to address as well, to alleviate poverty, to curb hunger, to enhance the food production system, protect the environment, I think, uncover some of the mysteries of nature and society in the process as well. And then finally, and most importantly, to educate and train students to address the real big challenges of the future. And so I think that's what we've heard a little bit about today. I'm so pleased to be here. I'm so happy to hear about all the accomplishments of TCI, and I congratulate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. I know most of you are getting ready to have a glass of wine, so I won't keep you too long. I just want to recognize two people who've been the sort of pillars behind this program since the day I arrived here. And the first is Mary Catherine. One of the first decisions I made when I accepted this job was to hire Mary Catherine as our program assistant here, so that she would be the person who was running the show for us. And I knew that she would be a great leader because she worked with Per for decades. And Per said, you should take her and make her your immediate assistant. And that was, I took his word. I always take Per's words, but this was a really important one that I got from him, and really want to thank Mary Catherine for being such a strong member of our team. The other person I want to recognize is Katie Ricketts. I mentioned to you already that Katie was the one who, she was the second person I appointed on this team, and she really helped build this program with me and build the internship program and all of that. But then she decided she needed to follow her husband to Colorado, and has moved there, and therefore, regretfully, we had to let her go. And want to take this opportunity to thank Katie for all the work she's done and helped set up this group. And Katie, hope you continue to have a great career ahead of you. Thank you so much. With that, thanks to all of the presenters, all the students, the great job you're doing. And we have some refreshments outside. You can mingle with the presenters there and ask all the questions you were planning to ask. Thank you so much.